All right. Thank you so much, Simon. I've got Simon Dang here for you guys. If you don't know, he has international experience with Nestle, Unilever, worked with Ocean Spray, a lot of other brands. And I'm so impressed with his work. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights, Simon, with us here on TimForest.com.
Thank you for having me.
I just, well, I enjoy helping food brands and grow, and also food entrepreneurs in particular. And I know that is sort of your sweet spot. Some of the work that you've done, we both worked with Unilever and Nestle, and so some of the work that you've done is very impressed. I've been very impressed, and so I just thought it'd be cool if you would come on and share some of your insights. Is there anything you want to share? Can you give some feedback on just some of the work that you do and how you help food entrepreneurs?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I started my career off uh, advising a lot of food clients, and this is like 20 about 10 years ago. I started a position out in Beijing, Beijing, China, and I started working with a bunch of different food products, different food brands, who wanted to make a bigger presence in China. And so I don't know if you remember then, this was like right after, it's during the great financial crisis, and the economies of the world were not doing too well, but China was a hotspot.
Yep.
So a lot of the brands put their money into China to help spur their business. And so this was a time when a lot of the brands wanted to come in and started getting a presence and selling to the consumers there. So with Nestle, Nescafe, our assignment was to help them launch their cafes, and sell the Nescafe, the capsules and on all that. Um, and so that was a big project. I mean, at the time, coffee was still kind of just taking off. Everyone knew about Starbucks, but there wasn't much of a culture of making your own coffee at your home. So we had to kind of change that mentality. We used what was termed influencers back then, which was not what it is today. But back then it was a little rudimentary. But we did find a lot of influencers who are, um, I would say, influent. Well, they were in their business. Um, they had a following in terms of like coffee culture, in terms of fashion, in terms of innovation, things like that. And so they understood how we could use this, and so we used a lot of that.
Simon, how did you reach out to them? Did you just a cold email, or what was the process like to bring them into onto your group and on your project?
So we had on the board of my agency, we actually had uh, a celebrity. He's the chairman of our board. His name is David Liu, and he is actually kind of he we called him our secret weapon because he's a celebrity in China. He's from Taiwan. He had his own TV show and everything like that. And so he was like this king influencer by himself. And so he had a big network of other people that we could leverage. And so that was easy.
I know you're based in San Diego. Your company is 858 Consulting in San Diego. So how do you recommend to food entrepreneurs in the US and here in today being 2024? Do you have any recommendations on reaching out to influencers today?
I think it's just user generated content is the best for me. I advise. I
Ah,
mean, if unless you have a huge budget, unless you have a huge budget to hire one of these influencers, many times you don't really need it. If you have a good product and you have a good social media channel, you're gonna have people who are gonna review it, and you can just use that and contact them. And
you worked with Ocean Spray. What lessons or did you work with Ocean Spray that would be applicable for food entrepreneurs looking to grow their business? And how did you think about the business?
so Ocean Spray is really interesting. And so they came to us and they said, "Look, we need some help in growing our China presence, and we just want people to start using cranberries in ingredients." And so their whole approach in the US was, okay, it's a baking ingredient, and it's also used in things like salads, ready to eat. So this is in China 10 years ago, and the landscape was pretty different. So number one, a lot of people don't really bake at home at that time. In fact, a lot of people didn't even have ovens.
Wow.
It's just not an appliance that people had. And salads were not, something that everyone typically consumed every day. So there was a kind of a problem there. So we had to we had to do a lot of market research. And what turned out to be, after the market research, was that the product, the Craisin product, was perfect as a snack. This is the time when a lot of the office workers, the people who had access to more capital, um, they really enjoyed they were always looking for healthy products from outside the country, that they could impress, and people like to share these snacks. And so that was our target market. We figured out, okay, this is their target market. It's going to be office workers who want to get something healthy and something they could share. So we created a little shareable product, like a small sample packet motion spray. Um, and we sold it as a snacking thing. You could buy like packs of 10 or whatever, and you could go bring it and share it with your friends. And so I think we even tested different coloring. We made it a little bit darker red, because it just kind of resonated with the audience a little
So,
better.
so Simon, everything you're saying, we're not talking about the product, we're not talking about the flavor, we're not talking about the color or how awesome the farmers are for these cranberries. You're talking about the consumer. How did you go about getting this consumer research or understanding the consumer wanted a healthy snack, understanding they would share this? How did that come about? Because so many food entrepreneurs don't think that. They don't think outside the kitchen. They're not thinking outside of their off their farm, and they're not thinking about the consumer.
This was all in focus groups. So we did a lot of focus groups with different types of consumers, and we had access to our office workers as well. And we tried. I mean, we tried different things. We tried people different groups. Students. We tried older office workers. We tried just people on the street, general population. But it seemed to resonate the most with professionals working in the office. Um, and then we just, okay, well, this is our target. Let's just zero in on it. And we did a series of focus groups, interviewing them, what the taste is, what the profile is, what benefits. Later on, we did introduce, as you know, cranberries have a health benefit in terms of like
Yes,
UTIs and stuff like that.
right.
So later on, we did introduce that as well. But in the beginning, it was more about this exotic fruit from America that you can only get from America. You can't. It doesn't grow in China anywhere.
You work with startup and early stage food entrepreneurs. How do you approach that? I know you've got an intake process, but when you first talk to them, what does that process look like?
I like to zero in on the founder. I like to zero in on like why they're doing this. So right now I'm working with a couple of actually three wine brands and a vodka brand right now, in the alcohol space. And I always like to just zero in on, what's the reason why you want to create these brands? A lot of the times they have a connection to winemaking or the food product. In some cases, they just want to do it. They just think it's cool. It's something they've always wanted to do. So I want to make a connection between the founder and the product. And at that point, just to kind of give it, I think it kind of gives it a little more personality in terms of the product.
Oh,
If there is a connection, that's great. If there isn't at all, then I kind of switch it over to like, what's their belief? Like, do they have a general belief in what this type of product should offer the consumer?
so one of the areas that I like to work with my clients, I like to focus on markets and be successful in your city, in your region, in your state. Do you have any thoughts about that? Have you experienced clients wanting to go too big too fast or go to scale too early? How do you work with that with your clients?
In terms of scaling, it's expensive, right? Stocking fees, retailers, if you go the traditional route for sure.
Right.
Unless you have a lot of budget, maybe you don't want to be sold in Walmart or Costco or wherever as a first step. Maybe you want to start locally, build up that kind of presence and figure out your audience
Yes.
before you go nationwide. There's a really good book about that. It's called Ramping Up Your Brand.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that. I love what James Richardson. I love what he talks about in terms of that. It's like you need to figure out your brand and grow it at the right velocity. Otherwise, you're just going to crash and burn it too quickly. If unless you have a lot of budget, like if you're one of the big companies, I think that one of the takeaways in the book was like, unless you're a Kellogg's or Unilever or whoever, and you can afford to spend all this money advertising your product and buy those end caps, then yeah, that's great. But if you don't, then you're not going to survive in the retail environment.
Anything else that you would like to talk about or share with food entrepreneurs today?
Yeah, so my focus is really on entrepreneurs in the early stages. So if you just, let's say, for instance, you had just a tinkling of an idea, you've always wanted to do something, but you never really got around to it. Or let's say you have kind of something that's kind of going on. It's like a side hustle. You sell some food at a farmer's market every weekend or something like that, and you want to learn how to take that to the next level. So that's kind of, I love kind of working at that stage, the very super early
Mhm.
stages. And especially the people who are out there who have these ideas but never really get anything further from the idea. And I put together this kind of checklist, and essentially it's like the 5 most common excuses that people have. And so basically, like, a lot of people start off saying something like, I just don't have the time. It's going to be a lot of work. And so, things like that. And that's the number one. Number two is I don't have the budget. It's very expensive. Number three would be something like I don't have all the skills necessary for starting a business. Number four, it's too late. I'm old, or it's a long process. It's a lot of work. And the fifth one is I don't know how to sell. I hate selling. And so I kind of go through and I kind of bust all these myths, and one by one. And I mean, it's if you have an idea, think about it. I mean, what what would your life be if that idea actually came into fruition? If that came into a reality? I mean, think about the freedom you would have in terms of being what you want to do, being loving what you do every day, having enough income to spend on whatever you want to, and giving it to people who are in need of that money or whatever. Having your own life that way. I mean, that's the dream. And so if you think about it in that way, that should be the passion and the motivation to get you started.
That's
So
awesome.
I like to frame it that way too.
Thank you very much, Simon. Did you anything else that you wanted to share with folks at timforce.com as far as anything about their food business and thinking about growing and being successful with their product and their product launch?
I think like I mentioned, just if you have any idea or any inspiration, uh, don't just wash it away. Like, keep thinking about it, and and turn it into something. I actually have an idea I've been thinking about, and I need to talk to you about this, Tim, because I think it's a pretty good idea, but we'll have to do this on a separate call.
Okay,
But yeah, yeah, I gotta take my own
awesome,
advice sometimes.
awesome. Well, thank you very much. Hey guys, if you wanted to talk to Simon, reach out to him at 858 Consulting. You can send me a note as well. Thank you very much for joining us here at timforce.com. If you've got an innovative product, I would love to talk to you. You can jump on my calendar at timforcemarkets.com. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.